Hello dear friends. In this video I will talk about the celestial events that await us in the year 2021. I will talk from the standpoint of mundane astrology and perhaps sometimes mention individual horoscopes and signs, but that's not the main thing that I would like to talk about. I have video presentations for each zodiac sign, unfortunately not in English. I will try to make more materials in English. I often say this, but I will really work on that during this year and next year. So at the beginning, I want to make a short introduction. And this introduction does not concern specifically the year 2021, but I would like to talk a little bit about astrology and our projection of the future. If you are not interested in this, then skip maybe first 8-9 minutes of this video. So in today's time, many like to predict, and when one opens YouTube or any other internet channel, one will find that many politicians, various theorists, spiritual people, and all other predict. Unfortunately, there are many headlines, you see that immediately, that they predict some sort of disasters, which I would like to warn you about. Everything negative that is written or said creates a negative energy pattern, which is disasters. We live in a time of a great upheaval that is accompanied by the destructive and self-destructive processes. And only depends on the level of consciousness and of the level of maturity, let's say it like that, of each individual, how we will live on. So I would like to ask you, can you imagine positive versions of the future development of our collective in this earth? And if you can, what are they like? Describe these positive versions to yourself. It's a very good exercise. I have a problem with my throat, so from the time to time I will drink this tea. I hope you don't mind. So I wish I could tell you what will happen next in the next year, but now my knowledge is very limited, so I can only describe the transits and aspects and encourage you to do your own research and to try to understand everything that is happening in the best possible manner. I also want to say that I deal primarily with personalistic astrology and personal development of people. I have seminars and courses on this, and I became interested in mundane astrology a few years ago, basically, when I was looking for the way to explain to myself what is going on in the world. However, I know for sure that neither mundane astrology or any other astrology can predict exactly what will happen, even if we are all curious about this, because astrology predicts only within the pattern, not specifically. Even if one tries to clarify this astrological picture, to clarify it verbally, then things will turn opposite often. You know, we can't describe in details. That's what we can find out through astrology. Well, I want to explain. In order to understand astrology, we need to understand, first of all, the ecliptic. That is the path of the sun. And we should follow the events in nature and changes of season, the same as did ancient people who closely follow the solstices and the equinoxes. These are the main points in the year and the main points on the solar path, which determines our life on Earth. It is further necessary to follow the lunar cycles and all the encounters of the sun and the moon on their orbit. The planets and the constellations are in the second and the third place. As I'm Serbian, I want to say that we have old Serbian calendar. People also call it kolo dar. It is kolo, it's like a circle. And like many other ancient calendars, describe in the first place the path of the sun and the changes of its being, the being of the change on that path. And the change of the being of the sun is actually in describing the same thing as astrological signs. In my online astrology course, I explained everything through the path of the sun. So I explain seasons and everything that is happening in nature to help students to understand in a better way these basics of astrology. So if you want to study these basics of astrology or tropical astrology, please order my online course that is on my web pages, symbolicthinking.net. You will find English version there. Indian spiritual astrology deals a lot with the nodes of the moon and with the eclipses, which speak of the encounters of the sun and the moon. And I also do that in my interpretations, even if I'm interested in tropical astrology. But when we add constellations and planets, we get stories. And that's when the astrology and mythology begins, actually. The essence of that, what I'm doing, is telling stories. I'm just telling stories. That's how I understand my astrological work. So there is nothing concrete that I can say. As I said, even when we try to concretize, then one falls in the trap and the meaning of the story is lost. Furthermore, astrology is not for everyone, but today it became popular, so there are many people who are primarily rational and do not have sense for the symbolic forms of thinking, but they are also using astrology. So yeah, I want to warn here that astrology, that actually astrological stories, operate on the energetic level, on the level of energy. And now you would ask how that is possible. Well, it is not that everything is product of reason and mind, as today's man is taught in schools and in universities. And to explain this, I will quote a Russian philosopher Lossev, who said that thought does not participate in the creation of myth. And he also said, myth is bodily reality. And the same goes for astrology. Astrological knowledge is related to the female principle, of the principle of yin, like Chinese have yin and yang, so this is yin. So this complex principle, it's opposite to the complicated one. We have complicated and we have complex systems. And I very much recommend to you to study them in order to better understand astrology and generally what I'm talking about in this channel. And now maybe you guess we are moving toward creating complex structures. And we are slowly moving away from the complicated ones, which have been dominating too long in this Western society. For example, complex structure have no concept of time because they describe the time through cycles. The cyclical nature of time means that the time repeats itself, and thus there is birth, growth, decline of everything, and then the new cycle starts. And now our civilization that was imposed on us for too long, it is falling apart now. So it's so hard to figure out that this is exactly what is happening to us now. The sooner we understand that, the easier will be for us to understand that now we are creating a new pattern for the future of life. Do we want concentration camps, isolation and total control? Or we want free energy, countries without borders, justice for everyone and brotherly love? So I could talk in this way for hours, but now I guess it's enough that I guess you understand what I wanted to say in this small introduction. The main thing that I wanted to say, not is just how to use astrology, but also that if we anticipate disasters, we will have it. If we allow the media to create fear and to live through fear, we will live through the fear. In essence, from the point of view of the universal law, we are free people and we can do whatever we want with the pattern that is emerging now, this energetical pattern. And now let's talk about the events, astrological events in the year 2021. Eclipses of the sun and the moon, to which the ancient peoples were so dedicated and whose significance tropical astrology has long neglected, will happen in the next year and a half on the Scorpio-Taurus axis. In the December video, I mentioned that the last eclipse that took place in Sagittarius on the December the 4th was visible in the Antarctic region, the South Pole, but I didn't know that there are things happening there. Just now I heard from different sides that there are some fights and that we will really hear a lot about Antarctic in the months to come. And the effect of this eclipse in Sagittarius will last for another half of the year, so let's see what will be. But as for the eclipse on the Scorpio-Taurus axis, which will last until October 2023, I explained that they are very challenging, but I think that the great war or nuclear war will not happen in this period, although fightings are possible, local or some similar fights must be, unfortunately. I also think that the whole story about hunger, climate change, lack of energy and everything is made up, of course. Although all of those topics belong to the axis of Scorpio and Taurus. But how they present them to us, through medias, they exclusively serve the agenda, and I guess you know which agenda I think about. However, if each of us needs to develop within the archetype of Taurus, which means we need to now to protect ourselves and to learn how to provide for ourselves in the next year and a half. So now let's talk about Saturn. Saturn is still in Aquarius. Yes, maybe I didn't mention. If you want to learn more about these eclipses on Taurus Scorpio axis, I have a special video on that. I posted it in November or December, so please have a look at that. So Saturn is still in Aquarius, transiting through this sign from 2020 to March 2023. And is certainly one of the main symbols of those lockdowns and restrictions of human freedom. I talk also about Saturn in Aquarius in a separate video, so find it if you are interested in that. Here I will mention some other things. Let me remind you about something that I already spoke about, is that while Saturn was in Aquarius in the 90s, precisely in the 1991 to 1994, there some significant historical events happened in that time. America invaded Iraq, for example. There was a war in Yugoslavia and later the division of this country. Then the Russian Federation emerged, Ukraine emerged as a separate country. Also, Czechoslovakia was divided in two countries. So you will notice that the last time Saturn was in Aquarius in the 90s, there are many divisions in Slavic countries, and we had interventions in the Middle East, in Iraq. So by March 2023, this 30-year cycle will be over, and we will witness the creation of new states or new alliances in the Eastern Europe, also among Slavic people, probably also in Asia and in the Middle East, maybe even in some other countries in the world. Now they speak about that Alaska should be given back to Russia, for example. Those states who will now survive after this 30-year cycle make sense from the point of view of the future. And those who do not make sense, they cannot survive. Because Saturn is the planet that tests, in a way, sustainability. So if this does not make sense, it cannot survive, simply saying. I assume that new states or new units will now be created, to put it more generally like that, and maybe in a way this Eastern Bloc will be renewed. We will see how. We talked in the video Saturn in Aquarius that also supranational organizations such as the United Nations and some other will change, maybe some will even collapse, and new supranational organization will be created. And we see that in the East and also some new attempts in the West. And also we see that not globalists have global politics, but also China and Russia are also creating some sort of a global politics because associations are necessary in today's time. Well, Saturn in Aquarius in the year 2021 will be direct until June the 5th. And something similar happened in the year 2021. It was direct until May 23rd, I guess, and then after that time, the restrictions of human freedoms were lessened, So when Saturn stopped, in many countries of the world, these insane restrictions of people slowly eased. And soon after that, actually, while Saturn was retrograde, the first meeting of Russian and American president happened. I guess that was the first attempt at an agreement. However, based on the events that followed, we see that there is no agreement or something is happening with the agreement. And it is possible that will follow the new phase. And I guess it will be when the Saturn will be again retrograde in June 2021 or maybe later in the year. Namely, while Saturn is direct, which is until June, new things are coming. New events are coming. And only when Saturn stops, people integrate that what happened and they make decisions or they make agreements. It's usually like that. Unfortunately, I think that pressure on people will grow and it will stop, maybe we will see later, approximately from April to June. Of course, they will not stop just like that. They're having great fun with us, so something has to happen in order to stop this pressure with this and other things. I can speak about that. So only the retrograde Saturn means stopping and integrating that what was previous. Now people are talking about New Yalta agreement between two big powers, the first one after the Second World War. And even though they are preparing now that for January 2021, I think that it maybe will be more chances to organize that and to clear the decisions in summer 2021 or maybe at the end of the year. But we will see, we can interpret those events in a different ways, with the different transits. Now we are also entering the year with the one of the last square of Saturn and Uranus, and that's why we feel so big pressure now. But the very last square between Saturn and Uranus will happen in October 2022, and actually that's the end of this anarchy that is created by our gangster governments and that are completely against us as people. But this is not the end of everything. Let me just mention shortly this far future, not that far. We said that main end actually will be with Uranus making the conjunction with the star Algol. This is the Gorgon Medusa head. And that will happen in 2024. But in my December video, I spoke about that, or November video for 2021. I spoke about that because in November 19, there was the eclipse on the Algol star. And that actually means that from November 2021 until the 2024, when the conjunction of Uranus will happen with Algol, things are now happening progressively. Something is preparing for that big culmination. That's the peak point, 2024. This conjunction of Uranus and Algol is a special topic. It happened in the year 1942, in the middle of the Second World War. So now something will repeat. And now in this time when we live, things are repeating that were happening in 1771 and later in the end of the 18th century. Also things are repeating from the 90s of the 20th century. So we have like at least three big circles that are now repeating. That's why our time is so complex. But let's say a few more words about Saturn in Aquarius. It restricts human rights and human freedom. But at the same time, this very, very cruel teacher teaches us that we need to understand what is happening as individuals. And every individual has to change himself in order to create later this healthy collective. And it's interesting that now, of course, we are divided in two groups. Why? Because those who want to rule the world, they always do the same thing. Their idea of ruling is divide and rule. So if we want to save our life on this planet and get out of all of this as a collective, we must certainly understand that we ordinary people are not our own enemies, but we have a common enemy who is trying to destroy us, and it is doing that with the help of transhumanist ideology and modern technologies, with the idea to make of us bio-robots. Next thing that I would like to mention also, it is the problem what people are screaming on demonstrations. Demonstrations against governments and lockdowns are fine, but people are screaming there, give us freedom, we want freedom, which is really trouble to say. If someone shouts something like that, that means that he thinks that he does not have freedom and then somebody has to give him freedom, and that's completely wrong. We are free people. We live as free people on this planet. We are occupied by the colonists for many centuries, but we are completely free, if we understand what is happening here, to make our lives as we want. So this planet belongs to us humans, and if we grow up and take responsibility for ourselves, everything will change in our favor. We are free. We don't need anybody to give us freedom. I can also say that Saturn in Aquarius strengthens corporations, which is not really a good news. And at the same time, Pluto in Capricorn destroys national countries and national governments. And also, Saturn in Aquarius suppresses the will of individuals. So it's a bit trouble. But here is a third party. And this third party, they are groups, political and other groups of people who have human concept of the future world. And we should know that only if we unite, we can oppose the evil and we can change things. This is now those years, and at least until the summer of 2023. By the end, I don't want to go into details. That's fine. Now I just wanted to mention that now at the beginning of the year 2022, this square between Uranus and Saturn in Aquarius is quite strong. Mars is also quite strong, and we see now a very big change. Russia is setting conditions for America and NATO, which did not happen before. This is a big thing. On the basis of this ultimatum that Russia has now upon them, things will develop during the year. This square between Saturn and Uranus makes this time so tough and changes the path of the history, but actually has also some good sides. Among other things, it helps to prevent change in the world from happening abruptly, because any sudden reversal of planetary proportions can be devastating. So that's why the tension is good even. Let's mention now Pluto in Capricorn. That's a special story, of course. We know that current crisis of the world started when Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn, which happened in 2008. And this transit will definitely end in 2025. And according to the global government, they have global government, that there should not be, until 2025, should not be more states and governments of the national states. We need, they say, only one government that will be managed by the small corporate fascist groups, and they will rule in a technocratic state. And actually, that would be the beginning of the rulership of the machine over a human being. What's really funny, I guess you say. Another utopia, and we had a lot of them in the history. But the question is here, what is our version of this world with Pluto in Capricorn? Well, for us, that can be that we can begin to create a human structures, human networks, without borders, without pyramids, where there will be place for everyone, which will gradually later on lead to more human world. This is how we can integrate this energy. In a way, we can say that after this Pluto transit through the sign of Capricorn, there will not be Capricornian structures in this world, you know. So what will be, we will see instead of that. But let's go closer. Let's take a closer look at that what is happening on the last degrees of Capricorn. In the year 2022, Pluto will cross the path from the 25th to 28th degree of Capricorn. It will be on this degree, 27, 28, also during the year 2023. And America, on USA, has Pluto on those degrees in its horoscope. So let's clarify this a bit. The Pluto cycle is considered to last 248 years, which is not precise enough. Now we see that in the year 2022 and 23, Pluto will be on 27 and 28 degree, but the last time was there in the year 1917, 76 and 1777. So it's not exactly 248 years. And in 1776, America was founded. And now it is, Pluto is there at the same degree for the first time. So we do not know exactly what happened with Pluto return, because it's not easy to follow this aspect. Human beings do not have this in their lives because they don't live long enough to experience this. But even though, if we do not have many experiences with this, we know the meaning. So what would be the meaning? The meaning is that after this transit of Pluto, nothing can remain the same in America. So we can assume that current changes that are happening at the top of the pyramid actually means the end of the pyramidal structures or the ruling structures that were made or enthroned when America was created, perhaps between 1776 and 1777. And it's not just that what happened at the end of the 18th century. Actually, after that, followed the French Revolution in Europe, which happened in the years 1789 and 1799. And then actually New World Order was established also in Europe as in America. I mean, New Order, not World Order. So as we know that the rule is where Pluto goes, nothing remains as it was. Now we have to expect something like that with America. Something has to die in order for something to be born. The question is, of course, will we know what is happening, because we live in the time where they are saying us complete nonsense. Everything is hidden, and that what we see as news is actually programmed. But I think it will not be possible to hide that America does not exist, or that it's falling apart, or that things are happening like that. By the way, let me mention that Taiwan has Uranus and the 28th degree of Capricorn, and Pluto will now conjunct this 28th degree in the horoscope of Taiwan. And this is also one of the places in the world where fights are possible. There is a lot of army there. China wanted to join Taiwan many years before, but they still did not manage to do it. So we will see what will happen. I only hope that it will not be some destruction there. Then Uranus is still in Taurus. So let's now speak a bit about Uranus in Taurus. I have 3 videos about Uranus in Taurus, so please check them if you are interested in details and about that, how that will influence your sign. I also talk about Uranus in Taurus in my video for August 2021. So you can check that also. Well, in the years 2022 and 23, Uranus in Taurus is more important than before because eclipses will happen on Taurus Scorpio axis. So there in Taurus we will have eclipses. And now the trouble is bigger than before because we have eclipses there. Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus in Taurus with Pluto in Capricorn actually are the most dangerous transits that change the world. Those 2 transits of Uranus and Pluto speak of the destruction of the old world, and everything else that we experience is actually less problematic than that. So when these bandits from Davos, from Switzerland, talk about big reset, they actually mean of those 2 energies. Doesn't matter if they know astrology or they don't. This is actually Uranus and Pluto on the places where they are, which means total control of population, chemical war, new satellites that will control people, bankruptcy of states, the end of people-states, as we said, devastating natural diseases, hunger, and so on. According to their ideas, how they wanted to lead us into this disaster, now is the turn for the hunger and natural disasters. So we will see if that will really happen. They started creating it already. And of course, the end of all of this was for them one world government, one currency, and things like that. We don't need to describe these things in details. Doesn't matter for us. It will actually not happen as they want because we people also want something. We also have power to do something. And but one thing is for sure that there have to be some changes, some change of economic and financial system, and changes in the ruling system also. The crisis is inevitable, not that just is knocking on our door and in the year 2022, but actually it entered inside. But this can be very positive. Some sort of financial crisis must happen one day because they're printing money without control actually. And we can also assume that some sort of collapse of America will be related to the collapse of dollar that has no cover in gold. And we can even assume that this can be the end of so-called soft currency. Probably this is the main thing. However, in the video about the eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis, I also mentioned that it's possible that they will introduce something instead of money. and that we will exchange energy in a different way. We have credits now in China, which is, of course, a very negative thing, but can be used in a positive way, like social credits. We also have likes on Facebook and YouTube, which can also mean getting energy in a way. And I have seen something very, very negative thing that I want to tell you, that is actually speaking about this changes of financial system and energy exchange. So I saw on the internet a lady who got the jab. So it was there, and then down was written, get the jab and you will have 20 gigas of internet for free. So the question is, can we expect in the future that I will say, give us kidney and you will get the mobile phone? I don't know what to say, you know. I know this is horror, but I really want to encourage you to think of that, what can happen to us. Or maybe they will say, give us I don't know what, and we will give you electric car. So let's be careful about that's what we accept. Of course, we can ask ourselves, can it be otherwise? Always can be. The same astrological symbolism can be used in a positive way. However, as long as there are any ruling pyramids, we will always be endangered as humanity. But when we turn to ourselves and we start creating these networks and new structures, everything will be possible for us. Everything will be good because the universe supports those who live in accordance with cosmic laws. Let me also mention here that in December 2021, Israel showed a simulation of the economic crisis and cyber attack. And that happened in Israel with the presence of MMF and the 10 countries of the world. So simulation again. And let me remind you that before the so-called pandemic happened, they had a simulation of that first. So the trouble is when they have a simulation of something that happened later. So now they're simulating this collapse of the system and cyber attack. Well, all of this is that Uranus in Taurus in combination with Pluto in Capricorn. We have to expect those things then to survive in the best possible manner. But regarding to Uranus in Taurus, this transit also means a lot of good things, you know, and we will learn to understand nature and matter in a better way. And actually those true transhumanists, they know many things that we don't. They are quite much obsessed with programming of matter. That's why they want to program us as human beings. But of course, this can be useful knowledge later for any other positive purpose. And then in this video later on, I would like to mention another important event that will happen in the year 2022. And this is the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces, which will take place exactly from April 9 to April 17. But we will feel it all April. Shortly to say, it speaks of the supremacy of spirit over matter. It speaks about the power of collective feelings and the failure of political plans. So when Jupiter makes the conjunction with Neptune, this is the culmination of Neptune's transit through Pisces. And Neptune is in Pisces from 2011 to 2026. It brings chaos and manipulations, but also spiritual renewal. So the last time Neptune and Jupiter met was in 2009. They met 3 times in the last degrees of Aquarius. And this is very significant because first Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn in 2008, and then Jupiter and Neptune met in 2009. So what this means? While Pluto symbolizes total collapse of political system, and those things that were created at the end of 18th century, we mentioned. Then the conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter immediately after that, year after that, meant fantasies about renewal and the belief that everything will be solved and everything will be fine, and then they're just pumping money and squandering money without cover. And they also start presenting to masses that some very, very unreal story that like nothing bad really happened. However, now 13 years later, after 2009, some disappointment will come. That's inevitable. Whatever they try now to juggle or to invent, it is not possible to stop historical events. Sometimes you can play with this, you can prolong, but there are the time when things have to be taken in account. So this can possibly mean the end of capitalism, capitalists, colonizers, pyramidal structures, and creation of these networks that we are talking about. Why did we say that when those two planets meet, then political plans have no future? Well, because if somebody makes political plans with this conjunction, those plans are not realistic. Because Neptune and Pluto are the combination of mystics, artists, prophets, and so. So they do not have anything in common with politics and concrete material reality. But it is interesting that this conjunction often appears when people need to make some reforms, as it happened in 2009. Well, now is definitely time to recalculate everything. Inflation of some kind or collapse of economic and financial system is inevitable. And of course, those creators of big reset idea know about this, and that's why they want to create this house in 2022, because they would like somehow to, I guess, to control it in a way, or to use it for themselves, something like that. I will here tell you some historical parallels, and let's see when Jupiter and Neptune met in history. Now in the year 2022, Jupiter and Neptune will meet in water sign. And according to Chinese calendar, in the year 22 and 23, water will be very strong. Actually, water emerges now as the element after some time. So following the symbolism of water and searching for the meaning of this conjunction in previous centuries, I discovered that really a lot of things happen on the water when those two planets met, especially in Pisces. And I think that now, in this year, 2022, probably also in 23, there are some fights on the water, or there will be changes because of the things that are happening on the water. So let's have a look when those two planets met the last time. It was in the year 1856. Nothing really big happened. But when this conjunction happened in March 18, few months after that, Nikola Tesla was born. And his discoveries are quite important. He, in his horoscope, also has Algol in conjunction with Uranus that we are expecting to come. And I guess that his discoveries are used by both sides now in this war that we have, informational or any other war. Also in 1856, England was in war with Persia. We can maybe also expect something happening now in the Middle East, because we know that also the repetition of the 30-year cycle from the 90s say that America in the 90s attacked Iraq. So it's possible that things are happening there also. Then in 1856, that was the end of Crimean War on the Crimea. And in Paris Congress, they actually wanted to restrict Russia Empire to have the access to the Black Sea. So now we will see, will there be something similar or complete opposite? Also in the 1856, there was the declaration of the law of the sea, when they forbid the state piracy. Piracy was banned in that time. Then in that time, the first railway bridge over the Mississippi opened. Then also Danube Commission established, the Danube, the river. Also, it's interesting that Pan-Slavic Committee was established in Moscow, and I think that we are expecting something like that to happen this year or next year also. Maybe not only now Slavic Committee, but I guess the committee that will include other nations also. Also in the year 1856, British and French forces were attacking China, and they, at the end of the year, they burned the canton, and after that they took the city. And let me remind you that China got back Hong Kong in the 1997 with the conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter. Just it was in Capricorn, not in Pisces. So things will happen somewhere there also. If we go further back in the history, we see that in the year 1690, Turkish forces against conquer Belgrade, and there were big migrations of Serbs to the north and to the west. And definitely we can expect now in Europe some migrations, maybe now from the west to the east if things do not change. I mean, those lockdowns and similar things that they're doing. And those migrations that we experienced in the last years from the east to the west, especially to Germany, they were happening mainly, they started mainly in 2015, when Neptune was already in Pisces and Saturn was in Sagittarius. So Neptune in Pisces brings migration, Saturn in Sagittarius was creating borders at that time. Later on, they let migrates to come. Also in the year 1690, French people gave their territories to England, which was this country with the sea, I don't know how to say in English. And also, if we go further in the past, we see that in the year 1524, Europeans conquered the bay around New York. There are fights there. And also, if you go further back, in the year 1357, the construction of Charles Bridge in Prague began, and it lasts for now. So all of those things were happening when Jupiter and Neptune met in Pisces. These were those historical parallels. But I want to add something else. From the astropsychological point of view, Pisces represents collective feelings. Pisces in general represents loss of everything that is individual. They represent some sort of karma, a point where individual experience merge with the collective experience. That is why it is important to know that in April we can do a lot when we are united together in one experience of the world, and if we believe also in our visions. We need more than let's leave that for some other time. I want to tell you also here about this conjunction one biblical story. There is a story in the Bible about where we see that Jesus walked on water. Seeing that, Peter tried to do the same. But at one point, he doubted his ability and began to drown. Then Jesus came to his aid, saying that he needed to believe more. So whether you will be able to walk on water in the year 2022 depends only on your faith. Spiritual waters seek faith and renunciation of personal goals. It is not necessary to fight with this conjunction of those two planets. One just needs to surrender and to know that we are all together. We will see what kind of physical manifestation will that have later on. But that's not the main thing that we should be worried about. Unfortunately, each constellation can be used in a negative way. So it is interesting to mention that the change of the name of Facebook into Meta, or Meta, I'm not sure in English, fully corresponds with the conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. These two planets have the idea on infinity. And David Icke had very good commentary on this Meta or Meta. He said that this can be simulation within the simulation. And we mentioned in this video, when we spoke about Uranus in Taurus, that now in Israel in December 2021, they had a simulation of crisis and cyber attack. Unfortunately, when we put all this together, it is possible that something like that also can happen in April or during the year, but April is the candidate here. Also in the year 2020, Jupiter will be first in Pisces and then in Aries sign. And this video is already very, very long, and I would not like to talk about this in details. I will speak about that in monthly horoscopes. Jupiter will be in Pisces until May, then will be in Aries, and then will return in Pisces in October, and then later on also return in Aries. While Jupiter is in Pisces, some compassion arises and collective feelings are strong. It is a good time for the spiritual art, human ideas, and so on. But when from the May on, Jupiter enters the sign of Aries, we will see that individuals will take the initiative. Some new ideas will be born. Some kind of leadership will appear. And even this army or police forces will gain power or will be more important. Of course, Jupiter in Pisces is very beneficial for Pisces, and Jupiter in Aries will bring a lot of luck to Aries people. But we will talk about that later on during the year. Let me mention now at the end of this video only few significant transits. On the March the 3rd, there will be conjunction between Mars, Venus and Pluto in Capricorn at the 27th degree. So the question is this going to be the first turnaround in America? Can we expect some first big changes of economical and political system? Maybe. Maybe. This is combination of great passion, and generally we can say year 22 and 23 are years of a great passion. This passion can be love passion, political passion, or any other. Oh, true, you see. Pardon. We also have very heavy constellation on April the 5th, when Saturn and Mars will meet in Aquarius, unfortunately. Hopefully Venus will be close by to soften this. But it's a trouble. Somebody can make pressure on people with this. And we know now that immediately after that Jupiter and Neptune meet, which is actually the combination of the Savior. Also in April and May we have first series of eclipses on Taurus Scorpio axis. And we said that Saturn will be retrograde from June on. So the game will change in April, May and June. Mainly, I guess, in April and May, maybe beginning of June in 2021. Are they going to make more pressure on us until that time? Yes, it's quite possible. Maybe it will not just be political fight between those sides, but yes, more pressure. But definitely it can be the end. In April, May and June. In October and November, we will have eclipses again. And we said the last square of Uranus and of Uranus and Saturn is going to happen in October. So you see it's very, very dynamic until the end, until December of 2022. But really this first phase, the end of this first phase of this very big circus can end in December, from December to March 2023. Let us also mention that in the year 22, in August, precisely on the 1st and the 2nd of August, Uranus and Rahu, the North Node, will meet in Taurus. Even Mars will be there. And this is a really Promethean struggle. And Prometheus struggle for people to give them new technical achievements, but always Promethean energy is some sort of rebellion against God. So you'll see who will be able to integrate this energy in the best possible way. But definitely it is very explosive. And the last thing that I want to mention is Mars. Mars will be very strong in the 2020, and it will have very long transit in Gemini. It will stay in the Gemini sign from August 21 until March 25th because it will retrograde in this sign. And let me remind you, today Russia identified themselves with the archetype of Gemini because they celebrate their national day on June the 12th. This means that Russia will take the initiative. It is taking it already now, but I guess with this Mars will be more even. Maybe some fights have to happen. I don't know about that. It is just action with Mars. So use it as you want. And it is really very important that Russia reaches the level of the sovereign country. There are no sovereign countries in the world today. So if Russia can do it, then maybe they will destroy this globalistic agenda, and by defending themselves, maybe they can defend also a big part of the world. This is actually what is happening in this world. Mercury will be retrograde 3 times, and that's what we will talk about later on during the year. And that's all for now. All of the contacts you will find under this video on YouTube. If you want, you can of course make personal consultations with me, create the schedule for have consultations with me. I also have a big surprise for you. The first book in the edition of the Symbolic Thinking, which is called, there will be in 3 languages, and it is in English, it is called The Scrolls of Symbolic Thinking. So the first book is now in English. I don't have many things in English, but this first book will be in English. The name of this book is The Shift of Consciousness in the Time of the Avant-Garde. And you will see that in that book, I describe things that were happening in the 20s of the last century, and you will see the parallels with that, what is happening now, So only now we really experience until the end, that's what the avant-garde and also avant-garde philosophy, not only art of the avant-garde, created at the beginning of the 20th century. So this book will be on my web pages during January. If you want, you can order it. I send it everywhere in the world. No problem for that. So that's all for now. If you like the video, subscribe to my channel. And thank you very much for this. And I wish you a very happy new year. It will be dynamic, passionate, challenging year in which we will be invited to unite and walk together in this heavenly ocean through a common and unique experience of the reality. And do not forget to practice that also while you're alone.